There comes a time when the Man of Steel needs a little more steel. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, the Gold Label Collection Superman Unchained Armor Patina Edition. When the weaponized alien called Wraith goes on a destructive rampage in the Batcave and both Batman and Wonder Woman are unable to stop him, Superman dons an armor that features a shield and battle axe to confront the electromagnetic adversary. Their battle continues to the center of the Earth, where Superman is finally able to defeat him, leaving him floating in the lava at the Earth's core. I wonder when Superman was battling the Wraith if he had the Righteous Brothers playing on his playlist built into the suits. Before we get a closer look, that's a reference, by the way, that no younger viewer is probably even going to pick up on. But though, before we get a closer look, though, at the Unchained Armor Superman Patina Edition, I'd like to first thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did come through and provide this sample we could have a look at. I'm grabbing as well the tape measure, and in a moment, I'll bring in the original Unchained Armor Superman so you can see the difference between the two. Unchained Armor Superman, at least in his state right now, stands 8 inches in height, or it's going to be about 20 centimeters tall. Having a bit of a balancing issue, but here's what he looks like with the original Unchained Armor Superman. Chalk up a lot of the unbalancing act by just the big wings that he has attached on the back of his body. Another Patina Edition Superman we can also bring in as well is the Superboy Prime. Now, this was the Infinite Crisis Patina Edition Superboy Prime, which is a really interesting thing because if you're looking at both of these, Patina usually refers to the oxidation done to metal, mostly in brass. So I would imagine that this one actually favors a little more the idea of Patina Edition. I'm not really sure necessarily where the silvers and reds came into play when it came to the Unchained Armor Superman, though. Maybe we'll talk about rusting metal later. In the meantime, though, let's talk about the accessories that come included with the Unchained Armor Superman. First, the figure comes included with a display stand for the figure. Then the figure comes with a display stand for the card. Then the figure also as well comes included with the wings that attach onto the back of the figure's body. Rewinding that, though, just a little bit. First, the figure comes included with a display stand meant for the figure's body. Same circular stand as what we've gotten already before with the DC Multiverse figures, yet done differently, though. This time around, we actually get a more darker gray. It isn't quite the same gray as actually the body. I mean, the body for the Superman is actually using more of a metallic silver. This is kind of more of a muted gray instead. I will say, though, I really like the look of the Superman symbol that they chose here. It's very differently done. I mean, it's in fact actually the same Superman symbol that he has on the front of his chest. It's one that I would certainly like to get on a t-shirt. The darker red definitely does pop a lot really well, actually on the backdrop of the gray here. And this, of course, can attach the undersides of either one of his boots. Best advised, really, as well, when you see in a second when we're going to attach onto the wings. The figure as well comes included with a podium stand for holding the card. I wanted to bring in the Patina Edition version of Superboy Prime's stand so you can see that they're exactly the same. And while the molding is the same, you can see that they're cast in different plastics. While this would have been kind of more the closer coloring to Patina, with those browns and greens added and incorporated, this is kind of going more the route of kind of that same, it isn't quite even the same coloring as the display stand. As you can see, there's some additional silver that they brushed on there as well. There are a few little messier areas you can see on the DC logo stand, for example. I don't know if I like really the silver, that especially like the silver at the top here. Just sort of looks like they just took a brush stroke and ran it across just a few passes through the garden, so to speak. I would have just preferred if it was just more of a silver, just more of a red finish, and maybe just a few little splotches. Like what they've done around the D and the C look fine. It's just all the additional silver up here that looks a little messier. Now, of course, it does store the card on the top here. The card is removable. We're just going to pick it up right now. Now, this card actually does have, I'm just going to grab the one that we got from before with the Infinite Crisis Superboy. Just bring them in so you can see that they're pretty much identical to one another with the way that they've finished these. Now, in both the cases, these are actually exclusives, and I like the way they've actually got Patina Edition on the side. But again, like the choice of the colors seem a little strange to me, because like if we had, maybe if it had been the other way around, and let's just say we had actually looked at the Unchained Armor Superman first, which again, by the way, is a store exclusive. I didn't mention this earlier, a store exclusive over at McFarlane Toys store for, I think it's 10,000 copies. But had we only looked at, say, this one first, and then, say, looked at this one, I may not have been as harshly judging the fact that this one doesn't really have the Patina colors that I'm more used to seeing. Like, again, the browns, the greens, the yellows, all the things that sort of make Patina a real thing. It's the oxidization on metal. But if we flip around the back of the card, you got yourself a certificate of authenticity, once again to indicate, as I already mentioned just only a few moments ago, that out of only 10,000 copies, this one happens to be 8,147. We're going to go ahead and take that and put it back on the card, back on the standee. Now, where normally would have been the case where I would have taken these cards and would have put them in my trading card sheets, it's never really the case when it comes to these exclusives. This cards, by the way, is very difficult to put back in the standee. I think maybe I've got one of the corners. There we go. I've got one of the corners frayed. But usually when it comes to these exclusive editions, I always put them on with the podiums, and I always have them along with the figures. The other trading cards, as we always look at with the single figure releases, always go immediately into my trading card sheet. Why does it look like I'm playing a piano off to the side? Put that, though, to the side. And the other thing that comes included with the figure as well is that he has the wings. Now, the wings are very large-looking metal wings. I can't even imagine the weight that this would then add on to an already weighted figure's body. But again, like if you put this on the back of the figure, you really will want to be using the display stand, just happens to be right here. Plug him by all means on the bottoms of his feet. Now, the actual wings, while being a little bit softer in plastic, you can see that they get a little bit of that additional silver that's brushed along the edge, both on the top and on the bottom, or on one side and then on the other side. And these just plug into place. Now, you could also, for all intents and purposes, they don't have to necessarily be wings. You could, for the sake of this, also attach this into the figure's hands if you wanted to have, for example, the figure wielding giant blades. Now, obviously, they're not intended for that, but if you wanted to have, say, Superman carrying around big giant blades like something you would see in Final Fantasy, you could also go that route as well. The more intended plan, though, is if you flip the figure around to the back, you can see that there's two holes there. It kind of actually looks like a big smiling fish, doesn't it? Eyes, big smile right there. Fins off to the side. Notoriously been known for a reviewer that likes to say a lot of dad jokes. I mean, I feel like all the content I'm usually churning out, I'm always saying things I'm sure are just cringeworthy. But it does kind of look a little bit like a fish, doesn't it? Like a little fish with whiskers on the bottoms. Anyways, though, let's do away with the fish's face. We're just going to plug in these pegs. Now, these pegs are pretty hard to fit in. You kind of have to put them in and then twist them as you're doing it. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other side here as well. Now, these are also hinged as well, so you can, once they're plugged in place, let's see what I'm going to be doing in a second. Let's just, in the meantime, though, dowel these in. Dowel, twist these all in. There we go. And once they're in place, I want to make sure that I've got them facing the right way. Once they are in place, you can then hinge the wings. So you can have them like just defaulted as is right now, where the wings are sort of just off to the sides. You can, again, bring those wings out if you want to. And because, again, like they're plugged in place, you can also twist them around too. I mean, there isn't really, I'm sure there is, if you were to look again at the comics, there's a designated way to have these displayed, but the whole idea of them being hinging like this is the fact that you can actually move the wings freely out. Now, obviously, by doing that alone, I'm going to add a lot of back heaviness added to the back of the figure's body, so of course you will want to use the display stand. So for right now, at least, I'm just going to fold the wings down, and we'll get a closer look at Superman's face. What face he has, at least. This face, for me, always reminds me of a Gundam. I know, I'm sure, by saying it looks like a Gundam, that's only just roughly saying that. I mean, anyone who's a big fan of Gundams would easily say, hey, that doesn't look anything like a Gundam. But for me, at least, it kind of looks like a cross between Gundam and like a medieval armor. Just to, though, bring back the original Unchained armor Superman. While I didn't really initially love this figure, I'll be all honest about it, I have since kind of warmed up to the idea of how cool this Superman armor is. There's an interesting aspect to it that maybe I never appreciated the first time that I saw him. The thing I really liked about the original one was the use of the colors that they went with. First of all, you got kind of more of a matted black making up the majority of his body, but then added on top of this was this glorious metallic blue and red. I had done a review of this guy a long time ago. I was still actually surprised I was able to find this guy. He's been stored away in my totes for, well, again, the last time I had a look at this guy. He was on my shelf for a while after that, but then just with all the more recent releases we've gotten from DC Multiverse, sacrifices had to be made for shelf space, and Unchained Armor Superman was one of the casualties I put back in the tote. But I finally found this guy again. And again, like looking at him, I can kind of see why I like the charm of him in the first place. He has sort of a quirkiness to him that really a Superman shouldn't really have. I mean, again, the additional armor that he has kind of looks more to be something like Tony Stark would have, and not really Kal-El. Now, with all the colors that you get here for the original release of Superman, you sort of strip a lot of that away when it comes to this release. Just because we do away with necessarily the blues does not make for a lesser looking figure. In fact, the one thing I really like about this figure is the fact that they went with the silver approach. While it doesn't, I would argue the point, it doesn't certainly look like Patina. I'm just, again, bring back in the Infinite Frontier, or actually the Infinite Crisis Superboy. This, I feel, is a better candidate. If you really were to make the example of what looks like Patina, I would say right away it would be this one right here. This one looks definitely more like a statue. This, to me, just kind of looks more like a silver repainted figure, which essentially is what it is. The helmet, I think, gets a chance to shine a little bit more, literally and figuratively. The fact that they went kind of more of the shinier, dark gunmetal gray gives also more of a chance, I feel, where the figure has a consistency to it. And while in the comics, he would have had more of the silver helmet, and then the rest of the body be the traditional blues and reds. I kind of actually like the idea with the Patina edition that there's more the consistent color of both the metallic gunmetal gray, but that also carries over to the rest of the figure's body as well. All the silvers and all the gunmetal grays that are used in the head with the additional chroming of that nice metallic red gets also then shared with the rest of the figure's body too. So all the colors are really consistent with one another. The silvers that they've used brushed over top of again, that cranberry red that they've used for the shoulders looks really good. And I like, again, the way that they've brushed that onto. It doesn't look as sloppy, I feel, as like the podium standee for the card. I feel like there's at least a rhyme and a reason as to why they painted the silver on the way that they did. It adds, though, a little bit of weathering to the suit, because I think if not for that, it would look a little bit too bright for my liking. The silver and the red work really well hand in hand. There are a few little areas where it doesn't seem like any of the silver has touched it. I'm not really sure why, because if they had taken the time to paint the top here silver, and obviously they had stopped a moment to paint the logo on the front of his chest in silver, why wouldn't they have done the same here with the gauntlets? The sections on the tops of his shoulders, as well as the gauntlet, as well as down below here in his boots, are the only places, strangely, that don't have that color. It's the only part that really does stand a little bit on the figure, and maybe it's supposed to look like that, but I wish they could have added also a little bit of that silver also onto the boots as well. It just seems a bit strange to me that that would be the only parts on the figure's body that would be untouched, undamaged by any of the battle that he's in. Spinning around to the back so you guys can see all the detail work that they've done to the figure as well. Like, it's a really nice looking figure, but I think it kind of has more of a consistent look to it rather than the original Unchained armor Superman that we looked at before. For the figure's articulation, pointing. The figure does have a ball joint in his head, so yes, it does rotate the head all the way around. The head does look down, it does look up, and you can rock it back and forth as well. As for the shoulders, because the shoulder pads are as high as they are, it doesn't limit the articulation when it comes to bringing those arms out at 90 degrees, and you can quite easily bring them out at 90 degrees. You can bring them forward, and you can bring them back. Unfortunately, though, with the wings being on the back of the figure's body and the fact that the shoulders are as high as they are, you really can't rotate the arm all the way around. So if that's the kind of thing that would be a deal breaker for you, the fact that Superman can't do a 360 turn, unfortunately, that's the case here. Superman's arms also do hinge slightly up and down as well. He does have a bicep swivel. And the figure does also have not a double hinge necessarily, but more than enough of a hinge that at least gives you 90 degrees. The hands as well rotate all the way around. The only thing about the hands, though, is that they're going to be coming really close to, again, the gauntlet that he has on his forearm. So while twisting this, you can really feel that there's resistance happening here. And I'm sure with the rotation that I'm doing, over time, it might start to scratch the paint that's on the top, just because, again, like when you're looking at it, they're really so close together with one another. The upper torso is on a ball joint. It rotates, first of all, back and forth this way, but you can rotate it all the way around, really, if you wanted to. The figure's abdomen is also more of the same. I don't know why looking at this also, too, while I'm looking at all these things on the figure's suit and thinking it looks like something else. I had a smiling face on the back, but on the front, it kind of actually looks like a little bit of a snake face with little tiny teeth down below. Anyways, the top of the snake's head does have a ball joint, so again, you can rotate back and forth, but the lower abdomen area also as well that has all this additional armored detail does also have a ball joint too. The legs do split out. They're on ratcheted joints. You can take those legs and move them forward. You can move them back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. There is, though, a double hinge on the knee, unlike the elbow. And the feet do also hinge back and forth. Not as much, but they do at least rock back and forth as well. The thing about the figure, though, like the case before, because he does have all the additional weight on the back of the figure's body, it's always best advised, I feel at least, if you're going to have a figure that's top heavy, back heavy, front heavy, any heavy, that's going to cause the figure to have some problems standing on the shelf, don't even just fight it. Rather, instead, embrace the idea of using a display stand. That's what I'm going to be doing right here. And once again, we can bring back in the original Unchained armor Superman. Well, again, I like the color scheme on this one. Again, there's a charm to it that maybe I didn't see right away before. I got to say, like, the Patina edition, and again, I use the term Patina very loosely. For me, again, when I'm thinking Patina, I'm thinking more so this Superboy. That fits me better, I feel, the profile and description of really what Patina would be. And while this one isn't necessarily, I would say, Patina edition, quotations, I feel I do like the silver and the use of the red that they went with. The red isn't, unfortunately, all weathered in all the areas. So, like, for example, like forearms don't have it, the lower leg guards don't have it. But all in all, it's a really consistent figure. It's one thing that's maybe wasn't the case as much when we looked at the first Unchained armor Superman. There was more consistency, I feel, to the newer one, being the fact that the head in the silver and head in the red match also the colors that he has in the rest of the figure's body as well. While I do feel the term Patina fails on this figure, the one thing it succeeds at least in doing is giving new life to an old mold. The original Unchained Armor Superman body was a figure that we had looked at years ago. It was actually one of the earlier run figures that we've got from McFarlane's team. So dusting off that mold, so to speak, and giving it a brand new paint scheme, I'm all for it. And I think with this particular armor, it lends really well to a brand new color scheme, where the blues and the reds were used before, obviously more the traditional Superman colors. Just doing away with that altogether, maybe if anything, leaving the red behind, by now incorporating an all silver motif, I think is really where, no pun intended, the figure gets a chance to shine. The wings in this case, being that they're articulated, I've got them sort of more angled forward, like he's using more so for weapons, but it's a figure that actually poses really well too. The colors, again, really with the nice silver that they've used. There are a few little sloppier areas, unfortunately, when it comes to the brushing of the silver that they've used for the finish. More so, I think, for the display stand, not as much for the figure. And while, yes, I would have appreciated if they could have added just a little more of that silver also to keep it consistent on the arm guards and the leg guards, boy, it's a nice looking Superman figure, though. One that shouldn't be overlooked. Even if you weren't necessarily a fan of the original Unchained Armor Superman, you got to admit, though, the new finish that they applied to this figure kind of, again, makes him a little bit more interesting to look at. Now, again, this one is limited to over the McFarlane Toys store site. It's limited to only 10,000 pieces. You can certainly as well head on over to their site by the link provided down below in the video description if you guys are interested to get this figure for yourself. If you have already picked up this figure, let me know what you think of it down below in the comments section. If you haven't, is there enough interesting stuff that's been done to it cosmetically that warrants, I feel, picking the figure up? Let me know down below in the comment section. And once again, a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample of the Superman Unchained Armor Patina edition that we had the chance to have a look at in this review. If you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit it with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly would like to stick around for more, just an FYI, though, we are going to be looking at some more DC Multiverse stuff, so I know if that's the kind of thing that a lot of you guys like to come back to this channel for, just know we got a lot more heading your way in the distant future. Of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.